the Science Notes podcast on OAR FM Dunedin, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. I'm Dave McMorrin. Over the next half hour, I'll be chatting with a graduate science student about their research, their passion for science, and the things that fuel their creativity. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Science Notes. My name's Dave McMorrin, and this time our guest is Tawfique Rahman. Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for coming along.
No worries.
Tawfique is doing a PhD in geography.
In human geography.
In human geography. That's, of course, an important distinction at Otago because there's physical geography and there's human geography. And you're a human geographer, or what my friend who did a degree in geography said, you're a human. And so we're going to be talking a bit this time about what you've been doing for your PhD work.
Yes.
But before we get into that, tell me about how you've ended up at Otago doing a PhD, because your backstory is more complicated than some.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm an architect, and I did my bachelor in architecture from Bangladesh, where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And I did my master's from Deshal International School of Architecture, from the same premises of Bauhaus School.
Right.
And after that...
So that was in Berlin, yeah?
It's 230 kilometers from Berlin towards east.
Right. Okay.
And then I did my teaching in Bangladesh in universities, mm-hmm. and then I decided to pursue PhD. Ended up in Otago. Right. Yeah.
So you're not your standard sort of 21-year-old fresh-faced postgraduate student.
No.
So why New Zealand after all of so Bangladesh and then Europe and then back to Bangladesh and then to New Zealand? Why New Zealand?
One of the things would be I was exploring the places. So I have done my master's in the European background. Mm. In between, I have attended a conference in America as well. And on those things, I have found Otago University to be one of the most foretelling and one of the most advanced in this sector where they're doing this research on the particular subject I'm doing on. That's why.
So you came here because of the reputation?
The reputation and also the supervisors.
Yeah, and not the weather?
No. For surely not Dunedin weather.
Although to be fair, it's probably no worse than Germany.
No, it's not actually. Yeah. It's much better than Germany.
Yeah.
But not what I expected.
Not Bangladesh. So then you're clearly not doing architecture as in a normal, the way that people would think of architecture being. You're not doing that as part of a human geography PhD. So what is it that you are studying?
The idea of my thesis or research, it still has something to do with design, because you know what we say, once an architect is always an architect. We live by that name and go by that as well. But my main research idea is why adults do not play in cities anymore. And my plan, my master's was towards urban design, and so it's in a broader spectrum of cities and finding out how cities can be more playful. So I am looking into that while designing something to be implemented into the cities in urban spaces, and see whether all ages, demographics, and genders engage with it playfully, and showing that play is needed for, even though it is generally associated with children, it is actually needed, desired, and experienced and enjoyed by people of all ages, and therefore integrating it with the urban design.
So I suppose in a typical New Zealand city like Dunedin, if you said that you need to designate areas for play, most people would probably immediately think of rugby fields. I mean, maybe playgrounds for little kids, but then sports grounds. But that's not really what you're talking about, is it?
No.
Because that tends to be, I mean, not exclusively, but it tends to be aimed at children.
Yes, and also they are designed for particular sort of play and games.
Right. But so it's very directive in what you're going to do in that space.
But what I'm looking into is a spontaneous play, I actually call them in my particular research as ludic activities. That means being playful. Now, if you look into the games and play that we think of, it's actually some of the time, or many of the time, with some other people or more than one. But being ludic, that means being playful, it can be only you as well.
Yeah.
So you're just walking by everyday spaces through the city and you suddenly see some patterns on the pavement. You feel good about it. You start hopping on those.
Right,
You're being
like
playful.
a sort of a hopscotch type thing.
Yes, you're being ludic, you're being playful. And that brings out the joy in the users of the city, and I'm looking into that. Yeah.
So, I mean, do you have some, so the hopscotch thing on the ground would be one thing. Do you have some other examples of like in a New Zealand context, what that play might actually look like that adults, as they're going about the city, would engage in?
It's pretty interesting that if I go into the idea of research-related academia, New Zealand is one of those places in the world where a very few or almost to none researchers has gone through about adult play and ludic activities. But if you go out, you could see people walking in the edge of the footpath some of the times. Some of the times they're, especially when they're festivals, people are dressing up, they're dancing on the street, and in many of the cases, if there is water around them, the fountains, you'll see people. I could tell about the fountains in the Queenstown, where there are some foams coming in, and you see a lot of adults being very playful and very imaginative, creative sort of play. It's not directed. There are no rules that you have to play this way. They're just imaginative and creative in that way. That's what I'm talking.
So it's. I mean, I think it's maybe, especially in a New Zealand context, it's a matter of finding a space where you lose your normal inhibitions for trying to do things that might make you stand out from everybody else. Because New Zealanders aren't very good at that sort of thing.
Or it's coming out of the idea what you think that been appropriated for you by the social norms or the rules of the designers of the city or the authority somewhere, but you just be yourself and have some fun. For an example, where you are blowing these bubbles in the street, you are not really harming anyone or thinking of the rules over there. You think that's fine because you are having immense pleasure just doing that.
Yeah.
So it's sort of that way. And it's not only the context of New Zealand, but obviously in New Zealand as well, that the urban spaces are designed more and more with certain seriousness. And even those places that are designed for play, they are somehow regulated and designed in a way that they makes you behave in a particular way. Just for an example, if you think of the slides that you have in the parks, have you ever considered the width of the slides? They are designed in such a way.
Bottoms.
Yes, for the small bottoms,
yes,
for the children. Don't you want to slide once in a while in there?
Yeah.
And you never, or I never have questions on who decides to design the slides that slim.
Yeah.
So,
yes. And so Dunedin's an interesting case too, because recently there's been a lot of redevelopment in the middle of the city. And one of the things that's been the council have chosen to do is to put some big seesaws and stuff right in the middle, right outside the main mall in the middle of the city.
Yes.
And that has, perhaps predictably, because it's Dunedin, caused all sorts of controversy because people perceive this as being a waste of money.
Yeah.
And this is for things which are, I think, probably designed for children. If the council was to propose putting in things like that specifically for adults, I think there'd probably be even more pushback about that because people would perceive that as being a waste of money because they had this idea about what cities are for.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I draw the line because even when people are thinking, they're thinking this is for the children and this you should be designing for the adults. But the idea is what I found as an architect, as an urban planner, designer, and as a PhD student at this moment is what they designed was for the children, but they designed it thinking of the adults. They thought some people might do harm to it. So they made it very rigid, sturdy, strong, and then said this is for the children. And some other might say that what if it could be designed for the children, for the adults? What I'm saying is you could have just left that place as it is, having maybe some elements of designed elements that people can use, from children to adult, everyone, according to their imagination. For an example, what happens if you just leave a big balloon over there? Some kids might run with it. Some might feel to outgo of their frustration by boxing on it. And some just might write their names on it. And all of them will give equal amount of joy to the person who is doing it. It does not have to be for the children designed thinking of the adults, not for the adults, but it's for everyone. But to let the flow of creativity and imagination go on it.
Yeah. So then what specific part, so what is your thesis specifically on then? I think I read somewhere about you're interested in particular in the ways that immigrant women, sorts of spaces might be best suited for particular parts of the community?
My main idea is to show that play is universal and everyone would like to play in the cities if they can come out. So what I was doing is I was thinking of a social emergent group who are not very free or feels free coming out of this social, I call it the imagined audience, where they think someone would think something for them. And so I picked up this women group. Obviously, the women do not play much in the cities. And there is very few literature about or academic resources saying about women. So, and then on top of migrant women, being migrant, there are many other layers. They have the language barrier and so on and so forth. So what I'm doing is I'm sitting with them and I'm having one workshop where I take them on a memory lane experience where they think that sometime in their life they used to play.
Yep.
And one day they just stopped. And then project it on their city, that if the city, now they find the cities of New Zealand is much more safer, secure, and much more friendly than the point of origin they come from.
Yep.
And if that is the case, why don't you play anymore? And then they've figured out, yes, we can be more ludic over here, playful over here. And then they propose me sort of design that if it was here, I can start playing or so. And from that, I will be designing some installation and put it on there and see. So the idea is, if I do it with a migrant woman from a different point of origin in this context, and people engages with it, it shows that it doesn't matter the origin or the context of the playful object, or people inherently know or figure it out how to play with this thing or what to play with this. They use their imagination and creativity and then start playing and become very ludic in your city.
So your hope is to actually set up such a space?
That's my hope, yes.
In Dunedin?
No, at this moment I am looking into some cities. They're going in regenerative approaches where they really they're having some difficulties having to hold their population, and they want some regenerative initiative to take to make their cities more lively. And I'm going to propose these to the councils, that if you could do it, and if they find that, okay, this is something that makes the migrant women or migrant people inclusive as well, maybe they will do it and see what happens from there.
Right. Because I think I saw in the notes you sent me that you're doing one of these workshops up in Oamaru.
Yes, at this moment I'm looking into Oamaru, and then if one successful or unsuccessful, either way, the result will show what went wrong and what can go wrong or what we can amend to make things work that way. Yes.
Okay. So what sort of response have you had from the people for the workshops? Have you had lots of people coming along?
I have a particular number of participant, I have just started my workshops. So particularly there was the idea that I'm looking for a participant from 12 to 15 or so. So I'll have 2 workshops, but now I have spread it out, having 4 participants at a time, having one set of workshops with them, and then recruiting 4 more, and then having that and 4 more, how it goes. So yeah, it's a little bit slow process, but it's working.
Yeah.
I'm done with 1 set of workshops, and another one is next week. Yeah.
So how are you recruiting the people for them?
The Waitaki District Council was extremely helpful in that. They have a very nice program with the migrants as well. They have a newcomers association, which is very helpful. And the coordinator of that has helped me a lot. So I have provided a leaflet that these are the sort of participant we are looking for. She has spread it, and then I have used my own connections there. So there were some from my country, and they have brought some of their friends, and that's how I made the first cohort. And the second one is that, and next week I'm going there to meet. They have their own program where they're asking for the South Asian and Asian cultural meet, and I'll go there, introduce myself, and saying that. That's how I'm recruiting.
So is there quite a big Asian community in Oamaru?
There's not quite a big, but a good size.
There's not none.
Yeah. Because if you see at the New Zealand statistics, you can see that in last year, 2023, the maximum number of migrants has migrated from the Southeast Asia. So I think overall in New Zealand, there's a big number of migrants from there.
I mean, I suppose for myself, I imagine a lot of migrants will come to Auckland and to Christchurch and maybe to Dunedin if they've got some connection with the university. But little places like Oamaru, which is, I mean, people may not know who are listening, but Oamaru's 25,000 people or something. I don't know. It's
14,000.
14,000, right? So it's small, right?
Very small.
And so it doesn't seem to me to be an obvious place where people would immigrate to.
Yes, but still it's attracting a number of migrants. And so one of the ideas that came from my thesis as well, if the cities are becoming more global, even these small towns and small cities, you need to know how to house these migrants. Right? So it makes the city more inclusive, it makes them more inclusive, and the cities becomes more safer places if you can do it.
Yeah. There's so much focus in New Zealand these days about just having enough houses for everybody, but houses do not make a community in and of themselves. You have to have these other aspects to cities as well.
Houses don't, as an architect, I would say houses don't even keep a family together. It's the home that keeps it together. And the home is not confined in a building or in a house. It's along everything that comes with it that makes it home. So a house is a home, but the whole city can become a home as well.
Yes. And I could imagine that getting to that stage, if you are an immigrant, could be difficult. But it's important.
It's very important.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's very important.
As someone with a background in urban design, what is your take on New Zealand cities in general? Do we do well with the way we... Again, going back to the whole Dunedin thing with this whole renovation of the centre of the city, which is supposed to be making the centre of the city a much more user-friendly, nice place to be.
This is one thing I trade very carefully about because I come from a place that is the actual point where urban growth is immense. For an example, I always like to give this little example that the density of population of Dunedin is 39 people per square kilometer. Whereas I come from Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, where the density of people is 45,000 people per square kilometer.
As opposed to 39.
39.
Yes.
Yeah, so I can't even put it in a bar graph because you can see the 39 there. So for me, the idea of urban design here and the design, as Alan Bartow would say, that it's a order without design in my places. And here, it's very ordered and designed places as well. But still, the cities and places of the Asian context are much more livelier than here. And it's one thing that we might need to ponder about. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? And the cities in New Zealand, obviously they are vibrant, but you can see that many of the people, they have this idea that once it is done, I'll be moving to Christchurch, I'll be moving to Wellington or Auckland. So as long as these bigger cities has this pool of things, you yourself can say that somewhere something is wrong. Why would they want to go to Auckland if Dunedin is so beautiful? So
yes, and Dunedin is beautiful.
It is beautiful,
but that so seems like that's not necessarily enough.
Yes, and whereas many people from Auckland to come to Dunedin to visit, and then leave. So why it becomes a temporary thing? Why not all time? So maybe that has to do a lot of other things, but urban design has a place to play as well.
We're just about out of time. So you finished the PhD here?
Not yet.
But when you do,
yes,
back to Bangladesh or somewhere else again for you?
Well, I was never a person for one place, so I did my bachelor here, master's in Europe. I've been to 27 different countries in the world. So I have a plan to roam around the world with jobs and wherever it takes. And who knows, maybe somewhere else some other day.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us about what you've been up to, and all the best for it. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, again for listening. You've been listening to the Science Notes podcast, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. To listen again or to find other episodes in this series, go to Otago Access Radio's website, oar.org.nz, or to your favourite podcast platform.